Hey everybody, so as you all know, whenever we get a new region, we get some pretty significant world lore, and this one is a doozy. The Frostmoon Scions have a book series called The Hymns of the Far North, which reveals a lot about Celestia, but more importantly, the Cryo Archon, the Tsaritsa, and her motives. It gives us a bit more perspective on the Descenders, ancient gods. Especially the third Descender, it's looking like Nibelung wasn't the third Descender after all, which I think's a really good thing but also a really bad thing at the same time, which we'll discuss in this video. I also think it gives a little bit more perspective on the individual Fatui Harbingers, but the Jester himself, Pierro, and his motives as well, which we will also speculate on in this video. But first, let's discuss the book series itself and summarize it. What is it talking about? Because most of us have played this game years now and we know it's always cryptic. Whether it be books, artifact descriptions, and lore, right away it's pretty clear who they're talking about, but they substitute all the names. Most of the lore within the Frostmoon Scions takes Finnish mythology. Just like Columbina's real name they gave her Kutar, that's Finnish for Moon Lady. And the Kuhanki Spirits is Finnish for Moon Spirit. Pretty self-explanatory. You also might find there's some inconsistencies with the timeline and events when they took place, but believe it or not, there's an explanation for that as well. First and foremost, it's clear that the Frostmoon Scions worshipped the bigger and broader gods of Celestia, the Shades. They refer to Nibelung, the Heavenly Principles, but at some point in time, 500 years ago, probably after the Cataclysm, the Moon Chanter of that time, Lauma's predecessor, kinda just stopped worshipping all the big gods and said, screw this, the Frostmoon Scions are just gonna worship Columbina from now on. From what I can gather, the Tsaritsa was set to marry the third Descender. They talk about the lover of frost and winter set to marry a cheerful, fair, kind-hearted lad, nobly born and nobly raised, a gentle and valiant son. To court the daughter of this individual, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, because we all know I'm going to butcher it, but I believe this to be the first Cryo Archon, who we know was a male, and they refer to him as the servant of our forebearers. Now the Frostmoon Scions in the Snowland Fay are ancient species that have deep roots in Snezhnaya, and the Snowland Fay were led by the first Cryo Archon, and they were created in Hyperborea. Hyperborea is the place that the first angel and the mysterious Voyager created, the Golden Land, to rebel against Celestia and their divine rule. We don't know for sure, but it can be assumed that the first Cryo Archon and maybe the Tsaritsa herself are Snowland Fay, since most Archons ascend to be an Archon from a long-life species of Tevat. Zhongli is the ultimate Adepti, Barbados is a wind spirit, Focalor was an Oceanid, picked by Egeria. Mavwika is literally just a human that was exceptional and kept winning the war, proving herself in battle. So I think the first Cryo Archon, his daughter was the Tsaritsa, and he betrothed her to this exceptional young man. We don't know the identity of this young man yet, but the condition was to open the gates to what can only be assumed is either Celestia or Hyperborea. It could be either or. I'm not 100% sure. Celestia makes obvious sense because that's where the Heavenly Principles is. And obviously they talk about suffering punishment from the Lord of Seven Calamities. But this could also be referring to Hyperborea, since obviously the Snowland Fay and the Frostmoon Scions don't reside there anymore. Maybe they were trying to get back to their homeland. Hyperborea was a highly potential place, created by the first angel and the mysterious Voyager. Both could equally be true. And if the first Cryo Archon originated from Hyperborea, it kinda makes sense. Both kinda add up. Also, if her father wanted to open the gates, this word in Finnish means north. It's possible that Hyperborea was somewhere in the north, maybe in Snezhnaya or in that general region. Or maybe it's its own sub-region like Nodkrai or Enkonomia, we're not exactly sure. It then says her fiancé was carved into 7 pieces, which obviously probably means the Gnosis. The Gnosis being the remains of the third Descender. That's why I always thought Nibelung would be the third Descender, it makes sense. It's proven in-game that the Gnosis are the Elemental Authority, and the Elemental Authority belongs to the dragons, the Sovereigns. We saw Neuvillette get his return from Focalor. It just always made sense to me that the Dragon King would have some of each elemental authority within him, being an all-powerful primordial being himself. And the dragons are specifically from the light realm, which the elements stem. But I guess I was wrong, which begs the question of who her fiancé was then. How did he have this authority? How are the Gnosis his body? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. It states that this young pure girl will never marry again. May your grace still the wild winds of the frigid night and bring warmth to the young birds huddled on the frozen earth. And we know the elemental jades that you use for ascending your characters all contain lore of the 7 Archons. For the Cryo Jade, it's referred to as grieving ice. The Tsaritsa is described as the god of love with no love left for her people. And if the Tsaritsa's fiancé who she loved was carved up into 7 Gnosis, then it makes complete sense why she's so hell-bent on getting them back. Project Stuja might not just be creating a weapon to defy this world, overthrow Celestia, but actually resurrect her fiancé, her true love, which puts so much more meaning on collecting the Gnosis. And it kind of explains why the Archons themselves are not too keen on keeping it to begin with. It almost makes you feel a sense of pity towards the Cryo Archon if that's the case. And it kind of puts into perspective too why the different Harbingers have different amounts of loyalty. The captain stated that the Harbingers can pursue their own ambitions if they desire, and they can take priority over the Tsaritsa's will. Look at La Senora. For La Senora, it was obviously personal for her, taking the Gnosis from Venti. And La Senora is widely regarded as one of the most loyal Fatui Harbingers to the Tsaritsa. This makes so much sense now if you think about it. La Senora, known as Rosalind Karushka Lothfather, is also known as a fair lady of Mondstadt. Her lover Rostam died during the Cataclysm and she blames Venti. If the 7 Archons resemble the 7 deadly sins, then Venti is definitely the sin of sloth, which transitioned her into the Crimson Witch of Flames. She's kind of like a smaller mirror version of the Tsaritsa, a pale, fair lady that lost the love of her life and is now bitter. So her taking the Gnosis in such an aggressive way that she did, slapping Venti, in a way it's sort of like she's grabbing the remains of her own lover. Her and the Tsaritsa have a lot in common. But this also makes me believe that the jester, Pierro, is actually the mastermind behind this whole thing. I really do think he's manipulating the Tsaritsa's grief, and has been this whole time. Once we get to Snezhnaya, I think it's going to turn right around on its head. Pierro might betray the Tsaritsa and take the Gnosis for himself, because I do think he has his own ambitions. And when it actually shows the Fatui in the trailer, it shows the rooster, the mayor of Snezhnaya. I really do think the Harbingers are the ones that are in control. They are the ones that are making this all happen in every single nation simultaneously with their massive influence and army. Also, the Rooster, he's either a Snowland Fay himself or a dragon. I mean, his codename's the Rooster. And I also think he's an Archon familiar. I think he is to the Tsaritsa the same way Dvalin is to Venti, Yaimiko is to Raiden. Not really relevant to the book, I just know we're getting so close to Snezhnaya, and we really don't know much about the Rooster yet. And I really don't know if he's loyal to the Tsaritsa as well. The part about Pierro actually manipulating her grief is just speculation, but that's what my gut tells me. The Jester might even be a rebound that filled the void, since we know they have a partnership, and partnership can have many meanings. Now, as for this mysterious new third descender that we might potentially have here, Hyperborea in Greek mythology stands for Beyond the North Wind. And because this stands for North in Finnish, that's just another reason why I think the first Cryo Archon might have wanted the gates of Hyperborea opened up instead of Celestia. But besides Hyperborea being the Golden City, what other little details do we know? An ancient civilization in the far north, which was also impacted by a celestial nail. Both the Frost Moon Scions and the Snowland Fay originate from there. And sadly enough, after Hyperborea was destroyed, maybe that's the location that her fiancé was carved into 7 Gnosis, the spirits of some of the warriors awakened into the wild hunt. But we're missing something important here. What was the purpose of Hyperborea being created to begin with? The mysterious youth that married the first angel wanted to combat Celestia and inquired about the forbidden origins of this world. Angels in the ancient days of Teyvat were known to wear crowns that resembled shackles, shackled to this world in their duty to the Primordial One. This mysterious voyager had already been to Teyvat once before, when Nibelung ruled alone, and they were good pals. When the voyager returned before they met and married the first angel, he was devastated to learn that Nibelung had left and the dragons were segregated. And it states that this voyager entered the shell that is Teyvat's false sky, Bubble World, and cast their consciousness into a body of a youth. And then it talks about Skirk venturing far north and discovering this golden city, discovering forbidden methods of creation, many Snowland Fay spirits forged by the bones of a giant beast. Skirk discussing how the Snowland Fay were created. And this mysterious envoy, referring to the Voyager, dreamed that one day these little creatures might create a perfect being that could merge with the world. The first angel then talks about meeting the unnamed youth in the far north underneath a silver tree, and in those star-shaped pupils saw the reflection of herself and she had never yet known. Come now, let us recast these absurd laws and nourish the barren north with blood. Let us build a city and a tower that soars up to the clouds, that the people of the earth need weep bitter tears no longer. I cast this useless crown into the dust, that all earthly nations may breathe free of their shackles. I'm not going to read the whole artifact set, but the point is, this Hyperborea, this golden city, had the ability and even tried to create somebody that could challenge the world. That was the whole point. Maybe from this spawned this mysterious young lad that was carved into 7 Gnosis. For all we know, the dragons could have played a part in this, since they had advanced technologies as well and had a friendship with the Voyager. Hyperborea kinda sounds a lot like Conria. It was like the original Conria in a sense. Even the star-shaped pupils like the Voyager. It has to make you wonder if all Conrians are ancestors of this Voyager. Conria is basically Hyperborea 2.0. And if you actually want to go deeper with this, the Pale Princess and the 6 Pygmies kind of piggybacks off this, because the 6 Pygmies are obviously the 5 sinners in Dainsleif. And if Conria can create 5 sinners in a being like Sertologi, Rhindaughter, Rarier, that can defy this world, then Hyperborea creating a 3rd Descender isn't so crazy when you think about it. Potentially set to marry the Tsaritsa, but had his body carved up. Now she's trying to collect her fiance's remains, and the first Cryo Archon being her father. You know we're gonna get only more and more Snezhnaya lore anyway, since Nodkrai is a sub-region of Snezhnaya, and well, Snezhnaya is the next place we're gonna be going to. It makes sense for them to start hinting at things. They usually drop real big lore into artifacts and books for the people that are super into the lore like us, and then they eventually start explaining all this stuff in a very direct way in the actual story, main quests, side quests, kind of like how we're getting the moon lore now in a more direct way. The shades are now revealed, but for many years it was just artifacts and little hints. And because the Tsaritsa was the direct successor of the first Cryo Archon, it makes perfect sense that she could be his daughter. Now I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, because I know some of you will rebuttal this and say, well, she only started collecting the Gnosis 500 years ago during the Cataclysm. The Gnosis were clearly carved after the War of Vengeance, which was way before the Cataclysm. How does this make sense in a timeline perspective? Well, there's actually a few options that could explain this. We don't know exactly when the Tsaritsa inherited that title of Cryo Archon. Maybe she was not aware of the Gnosis until she inherited that role, realizing that's the remains of her lover, and now being hellbent on getting the other remains back. Venti describes the Tsaritsa as turning bitter after the Cataclysm. The Tsaritsa probably had a realization around that time and realized the other Archons are carrying around the remains of her lover. That would make me pissed off as well. But even if the Tsaritsa found out a bit earlier than the Cataclysm, she can't act on this yet. She must devise a plan. You can't just go around taking Gnosis when the Heavenly Principles are awake. After the Cataclysm happened, the curse of immortality on the Conrians placed, and the Heavenly Principles asleep for 500 years, probably weakened from the battle. This created an opportunity to form the Harbingers with Pierro, them having a mutual alliance, and then start their plan to collect the Gnosis. So perhaps once her fiancé died, she did not know the full extent until she became Archon herself. Another possibility is Istaroth shenanigans. I know when we're talking about time manipulation, it's always kind of a cop-out. But hear me out, this is not the first time it would happen. In 5.8, we learned that the Marajaveri was blown off the timeline by Venti, who has Istaroth's blessing. And in 5.7, with the Travelers, we learned for a fact that Istaroth seems to be very keen on taking things that come from the future and putting them into the past, in order to establish events that she wants to establish. This also happened in Inazuma with the Raiden Shogun. Istaroth helped Raiden Makoto plant the sacred Sakura in the future to help them 500 years in the past repel the Abyss and the Cataclysm. This is nothing new. The entire reason our Abyss sibling is off doing things with the Abyss Order, not helping Conria during the Cataclysm, being their savior that wasn't present, is because our twin's future messed up her own past, thanks to Istaroth forcing us to meet in 5.8, with one single citizen of Conria facilitating this. Again, I know it's kind of a cop-out to use time and Istaroth as an explanation for timeline and events not adding up, because there is a big gap between the Gnosis being created and the Cataclysm, but this is nothing new to Genshin, so it's not off the table, is what I'm saying. Before I wrap this up, there's one more thing. In this book, they refer to this being, and in Finnish, this translates to Primordial One or Primordial Being. What I find funny is people refer to the heavenly principles in a lot of different ways in this game, depending on the nation and how they interpret it. Very few people in Teyvat even know of the Shades itself, let alone the Primordial One and the heavenly principles. Master of the Four Shades, the Master of Fortuna, the Usurper King, the Usurper, the First Descender, Lord of the Seven Calamities, Lord of the Sky, Sovereign of the Firmament, the Winged One, and in the Frostmoon Scion's new book, Pitkamunen. Probably butchered that, I tried, okay? Known for creating the human realm. And obviously, if you translate this word into Chinese, it spells out Primordial One. If you remove the second and fourth letters in the Chinese spelling, it spells Paimon's name in Chinese, this being a Chinese game at the end of the day. Just in case you're still wondering who Paimon is. I know I already talked about this in a recent video, but Paimon has a crazy resemblance with all of the four shades. There's a specific detail on each shade that resembles Paimon, and the shades are just shadows that the Primordial One cast of themselves. The Heavenly Principles has been asleep for 500 years. Paimon is in a weakened, shrunken down state. Her crown is in the logo, and she is the mascot of the game. She looks celestial. At the beginning of the game, we're with Paimon immediately. Apparently, we got put into some kind of stasis or slumber for 500 years. And in this book and in the game, the Shades literally state that Asmodee, the one that trapped us here, is missing. In this book, they refer to all the four shades, but not the Shade of Space. Conveniently. And now with the inconsistencies of time and space manipulation, our sibling approaching us in the spaceship even though the door never opened, something being amiss, it really has to make you wonder about the beginning of the game. And if Paimon is the true villain of Genshin Impact at the end of the day. She is, after all, named after the main demon in the Lesser Key of Solomon. Is the Heavenly Principles using Paimon as a scapegoat? Maybe the Primordial One was never the true villain all along. Reading this book about the Tsaritsa's potential fiancé being the third descender, for some reason it reminded me of the Traveler. I'm not saying that it is the Traveler, but just how we go nation to nation resonating with each element. When we get to Snezhnaya, we'll have every single element. It's almost like we're collecting them to be the new Gnosis or something. This is obviously a crack theory, but now that this book continues to hint at Paimon, wouldn't it be messed up if she's following us on our journey, making sure we do each nation step by step being oblivious, when really she's farming us to be the new Gnosis? If we are the fourth descender and can resonate with each element, And Hyperborea was a place to design somebody that can challenge the heavenly principles. Maybe her fiance did something similar. Obviously, we're missing some key details and they could be just throwing some red herrings at us, but we are getting ever so close to the Cryo Nation and the Cryo Archon. And lastly, to wrap up the video, the Tsaritsa is 99.9% going to be an export or variant of Bronya, since Bronya is a reoccurring character in the Hoyoverse, much like Mavwika being based on Himiko, Raiden A being based on Raiden Mei, and this is not just speculation based on patterns. In the beta of Genshin Impact, they forgot to move Bronya's name from the Tsaritsa, so when Child was talking about the Tsaritsa, it actually had the name Bronya and then they quickly removed it. And it's kind of an interesting contrast because Bronya is a very important character in the first chapter of Honkai Star Rail, a world covered in snow and ice. It's like they did the opposite for that game and started with the ice level first. And this book also hints towards a fourth moon. So there probably was 4 moon sisters, but one never completely rose from Nibelung. So there probably was meant to be 4 moons, just like there's 4 shades now, but one of the moons was never fully risen. And this could very well be the moon that the Fatui Harbingers and Sandrone have their headquarters built over. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Maybe just agree on some parts? I look forward to reading your thoughts, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.